It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com, coming to you on a Monday, April 6th. Still no games in sight for the LA Galaxy or for Major League Soccer, and that shouldn't surprise anybody. We have a packed show for you tonight. Going to talk a whole bunch about some of the things that could possibly be leading to an actual game being played by the LA Galaxy, by Major League Soccer, by other sports leagues around the country. But we also want to talk a little bit with a very special guest as well, Mr. Kevin Hartman. So we're going to get to all of that in this show. And to help me do that, the panda himself is back, Mr. Kevin Baxter. Kevin, how's it going, buddy?
I'm the other Kevin on this show.
I was going to say two Kevins. What do you know? We're doubling up on all the Kevins today.
Yeah, and you have to guess, am I practicing safe coronavirus techniques here, or am I about to go rob a train?
Either one works right now. It was funny because my wife says that she was going to the store and she had a scarf wrapped around her face, and she was like, normally people would be like, "What are you trying to do? Rob this place?" She goes, "But it makes everybody feel better whenever we're all covered up." So it's like this weird juxtaposition going on right now.
Well, I knew I was going to be here with you. I didn't want to infect you. You feel safe?
Well, being we're more than 6 feet apart, yes. In fact, you're basically in another state by terms of distance. So I think we're good to go. But we do have some LA Galaxy stuff to talk about. Certainly some league stuff or some sports stuff in general here, Kevin. And things getting.
Before you get too far, who was the most famous number 19 in Galaxy history? I'm thinking Juninho wore 19, right?
Yes, I believe he did. Why?
Oh, just we could call it the COVID Juninho. Just shorten.
I don't. It's effortlessly funny. Once again, Kevin, that's what you are. Effortlessly funny. That's how it goes.
I've heard that.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. But no, I mean, we have to talk about, a little bit about some of these things. We've been hearing, in different national news, and certainly I don't think the national news is ever going to be sort of focused on Major League Soccer. But we can start to take cues from some of the other sports and some of the discussions that they're having, Kevin. And I think that's an important thing to sort of keep an eye on. And we had one of the larger discussions between the NFL and the President of the United States, whereas they were sort of talking about when the NFL season would start and what the president thought of that. And then there were some other responses. So, I mean, where do we kick this one off?
Well, first of all, the president said he'd like to see NFL stadiums full in August. He'd like to see the NFL season start on time. Now, this was a conference where he had a dozen commissioners from professional wrestling. Don Garber was there, baseball, NBA, and the NWSL was not invited, nor was U.S. Soccer, nor was the NCAA. But all the other major top 5 professional sports leagues were there. The president, who, remember, 2 weeks ago said he wanted to have churches fill on Easter, now he wants to have
Right.
NFL stadiums full by the end of August. And again, the commissioners were saying, that we'll have to just wait and see. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, said he didn't see it happening in his state, that he was going to listen to the healthcare professionals and didn't think that they would be ready. Now, remember, the rule is gatherings of 10 or more people. And since
Right.
Chivas USA is no longer in the league, that is pretty much every MLS game is going to have more than 10 people. So just one team is more than 10 people. So that pretty much wipes that out.
Yeah, it does. And I think that's the important part to sort of look at this as well. I think that the president was sort of looking at the NFL and saying, hey, we want you to start the season without people in the stands, but eventually as this moves forward, we want you to, we want to have full stadiums. And, it just feels like we're so far away from that. Whenever you look at all these things, we're still under, and Kevin, you and I have been talking about the hotspots. We've been talking about the waves and how it's not the same for everywhere in the country. And so trying to make a national decree about all this stuff is nearly impossible when you don't understand sort of, what each microclimate really and micro region is going through and sort of what that happens. And, a lot of the social distancing stuff that we've been looking at so far is effective in the fact that you're staying away from people, and that's slowing the spread. And what happens, and they actually pointed to a game in northern Italy of 40,000 people, how it was like the great incubator, it was the great accelerator of this pandemic. It was able to spread. And so really, I mean, even looking at Dignity Health Sports Park and its meager 25,000 plus people that you can fit in there, that's more than 10. And that's more acceleration. And so trying to get everybody back together into one of these small spaces, or at least large spaces with a lot of people who are packed tightly together, is, it's tough to wrap my head around how that could even happen. Even, and as you rightly pointed out, even if you're looking at putting together empty stadiums, 11 players, 22 players, plus coaching staff, plus cameras, plus everything else. I mean, there's ways to sort of try to figure this out, but social distancing is it kind of goes out the window whenever you're talking about any major professional sport where people play against each other.
And speaking of the NFL, I can still do this quarterback thing like this. Look, I look like a quarterback, see? But, I mean, think about when you go to a Major League Soccer game, go to a Galaxy game. You're sitting right next to somebody. You're probably shoulder to shoulder for the most part for at least 2 hours. You go to the concession stand. You're not standing 6 feet apart in the concession stand. You go to the bathroom. Galaxy scores a goal. Everybody high fives. So you're bumping, you're touching, you're in close contact for 2 hours or more. You don't know if the person beside you is infected. They may not even know because the incubation period is up to 2 weeks. And then, as you mentioned, I think last week I said there were 19 teams or 19 states in MLS. There's actually, I believe, 17, but then there's also District of Columbia and 3 Canadian provinces. And as you mentioned, every one of those localities has their own rules right now. And so you can't have a team play a game or go out and train if a team in another state doesn't have the ability to go off and do that. One of the things they talked about, I don't know if this will happen, but just to give you an idea where we're at, baseball has discussed a plan of having all the teams move to Arizona. So they're under one set of rules, play the games in empty spring training stadiums just to get the games started. This all goes back to TV revenue. That's the biggest chunk of this. Maybe not in MLS because their TV contract is so bad. But for all the other leagues, they don't want to give back any of that TV money. And that's why you hear this cry to play these games in empty stadiums so they can be televised, which, really that'd be great for us. I'd like to go to a game in person, but if I can't go in person, next best thing is to watch it on TV.
Yeah, I think we've all sort of shifted in that regards, where if you were talking about normally, Kevin, you wouldn't want to see somebody, play teams in empty stadiums, but we're not in a normal situation. So if we're going to be, quote unquote, watching teams in empty stadiums right now, that would be much more welcome than, seeing 2 ridiculous people try to simulate a game between the LA Galaxy and AC Milan on FIFA.
Who would do that?
Eric and I would never attempt such a horrible thing. Somebody rightfully, by the way, called us out on that one, said that was tough to watch. And I said, and this was Aaron, and I said, hey, Aaron, they're not all wins. And that means both on the field and in the booth. All right. Some people, let's just put it this way. Everybody needs to step up their game after that friendly that we just simulated. Okay. So you can go check it out.
I've been watching all kinds of stuff on my TV. We watched Evan Almighty the other night. And then we watched that, my wife, the talented and esteemed Mrs. Panda, we watched the English game, which was actually pretty good and made the point that the Scottish actually invented passing in soccer in the 1880s. And some of the Galaxies still have not really gleamed onto the concept, but that was kind of interesting. That was a good show.
That was the only thing. Well, if we go back to trying to figure out, what can we glean from, Gavin Newsom and the governor. Yeah, we're gonna get serious again. If you look at like what did Gavin Newsom say, and what is the president of the United States trying to say? Obviously, the president, as we've seen, wants to see things return to normal. I think everybody wants to see things return to normal. It's just the fact that some of us are using science. So we're gonna look at this. But one of the interesting things that came out today. And this was from Baxter Holmes from ESPN. He tweeted out basically and said, sources tell ESPN that the NBA and the NBA Players Association have been collaborating in assessing rapid response testing devices that, in theory, could yield accurate results within minutes, a process that represents a critical first step towards potentially resuming play. You and I have been talking about this, Kevin. You said, okay, so let's say we send everybody to North Dakota, South Dakota, one of those places, and you're going to have all MLS teams there. So that way, again, just like baseball in Arizona, everybody's under one rule. So everybody has that. And then you're going to quarantine everybody into these hotels, and you're going to limit the access that they have, and you're going to come in and out, and however you want to do that. The only way that works is if you have these rapid testing, and what this basically went on to show was that, they were looking at diabetes type testing devices, those blood testing devices that can give accurate results within minutes. And if you have the ability that both those are accurate and they're fast, then you can do something where it's like, okay, all the players who are going to play in this game today, you have to be tested right now and you're all cleared. Okay, great. You guys can all go play against each other now, because we know that in this closed environment right now that you've all been in, that in the last 15 minutes, we've kept everybody isolated and segregated. You guys can go out and play. And that's the idea behind this. And I think this is also the idea behind anybody trying to return to work. How we're all going to get like ID cards or something that said, oh, yeah, you've been cleared. You had it, or, you didn't have it, or however this goes. But there's going to have to be some sort of identification process that goes on both for fans, players, anybody in sort of this return back to quote unquote normal. This is the first really important step that has to happen with this, is this rapid testing, rapid and reliable testing. So in my mind, this is what everybody should be focused on. You want to know when things are going to return. These are the types of things we need to be focused on.
So you said that was a Baxter home story, right?
Yep, I did.
So there's this podcast has 2 Baxters and 2 Kevins in it. This is a keeper. This is one for the archives.
I
what you're
also
talking about,
realized
I'm not so much worried about the players. The players are going to be fine. I'm worried about the fans. And I don't know, can you test every fan going into an arena or to an MLS stadium? Those are the people that are shoulder to shoulder. Those are the people that, are in tight quarters for the entire duration of the game, 2 hours or whatever it is. Those are the people I'm worried about. And, there's been a lot of leagues trying to come up with answers. The EPL, which stands to lose nearly $1 billion in TV revenue if they don't finish the season, they're talking about going to a city somewhere in the Midlands of England. Every team would get their own hotel. They'd go play on practice fields in front of empty practice fields just to get the season done. They'd play maybe 3 games a day. That's one of the ideas that they're talking about just to get through this. It's not the same without the fans, for one. But I think the bigger problem is something that you mentioned earlier when you talked about everybody wants to know when we're going to get started again. MLS has set back their date to resume training 4 times. Players aren't taking that and looking at that and saying this is a real date anymore. The MLS season is supposed to resume May 10th. It's not going to resume May 10th. Everybody wants to have some security and some idea of when we're going to start again, when things will get back to normal. And you know what? We just don't know. I think it might be best just to say we'll get back to you when we have some information.
Yeah, it certainly is. Now, they did extend it for longer this time, Kevin. So if we really want to sort of, it wasn't just a week, which you and I have been sitting there going, why just keep extending it a week whenever you know it's going to be longer? Because now it extends all the way until Friday, April 24th. So basically, they've written off the whole beginning of April all the way into the end of April. And then, that leads you right into what are they going to have, a 2.5 week, sort of ramp up, or a 2-week ramp up to get ready for May 10th. It just, none of that really.
Team trainers are telling me they need 3 to 4 weeks, at least. Even if it was right now, they would need 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. I mean, you have to do a whole preseason again. And I know there's a lot of overlap between the stuff that we keep saying. I know that whenever we talk about all these things, Kevin, is that we continue to bring up the same points, but the bottom line is that those points haven't been cleared. Those hurdles have not gotten out of the way for Major League Soccer right now, and for any sports in the United States. It looks like possibly New York is finally through this peak, possibly. But you're looking at people like California and Governor Gavin Newsom saying, our peak is coming. And so
I'm hearing May now.
Yeah, exactly. Could extend. Well, and by the way, if you're looking at social distancing working, it shifts your peak longer and longer out, which is how that's supposed to work. So the fact that at one point we were told, hey, April is going to be real, this end of April is going to be really bad, or the beginning of April is going to be really bad, or, it's going to be happening in 2 weeks. And the fact that shifting out shows that possibly, we've had some success in the social distancing, but that doesn't mean that, sports are going to get back to quote unquote normal. I love this normal that we talk about. I don't know that I was talking with Sarah, who you and I know, and who always meets us at halftime. And Sarah is a healthcare professional. I believe she's in physical therapy, but she's having to do some physical therapy to patients who have been infected with COVID-19. So she's very much on the front lines of this. And so I was sort of talking to her about some things, and just, we were talking about, will handshakes even survive this? Are we ever going to shake hands again, Kevin? Is that something? Are we ever going to hug? I mean, I used to be a hugger. I don't know if I'm a hugger anymore after this. It's going to take a while for things to sort of settle down for us and go back to when we're not thinking. I mean, I don't know. I can't watch a TV show right now without being like they're standing way too close to each other. That should not be. That social distancing is not allowed. So I think that we have to adjust the way that we're thinking, and I think trying to even plant sports into this. Sports are not important, but they're a good escape for everybody, right, Kevin? I mean, that's what we've sort of always said. So you want to get back to sports, but at the same time, that's not on the front burner. It's something
just
that
think
will
about it for a
eventually
minute. I
come.
mean, I don't know if you ever hugged me, so I'm right now feeling insulted. But
No.
as long as the COVID Janino goes on, I mean, think about turning on the TV. There's just nothing to watch. I would watch curling right now just to see some sort of sports event. It's either that or reruns of The Office, which I actually like, or the news. But you're right about the social distancing and the curve for every state is going to be different because it basically begins when you start to put some of these social distancing things in place. Florida really hasn't adhered to that. They opened churches this weekend. Georgia, the beaches are back open again. Utah is a state, and I believe Kansas, where Sporting Kansas City is, and then Utah with RSL. Those are states that don't have any guidelines in place for quarantining and sheltering in place. So we got to wait for those states to come back. We got two teams in Florida, one in Atlanta. We got, again, Sporting Kansas City and RSL. Those are at least 5 teams that could be affected by this. We don't, what about Houston and Dallas? So it's going to be a while. New York and California, Portland, and then, of course, Seattle, they're ahead of the curve a little bit. These other states are going to take a long time to catch up. And until they do, we can't really resume the season as normal. And again, I go back to the point of, throwing a date out there sounds great. Hey, let's all be in church by Easter. And then when you realize it's not going to happen, I think you cause more disappointment than you do, happiness among people and the idea that they might be able to hang on to a date. I'll go back to Governor Cuomo. Tell people the truth. Let them deal with it. Don't hold out false hope and then disappoint them later. I think that's way more painful.
Yeah, it can be. This rapid testing thing has really piqued my interest now. A lot of this stuff is you're trying to look for the first stepping stones in the right direction, right, Kevin? You're trying to find out the path that is going to eventually get everybody back to work, back to watching sports. All of these things are things we're trying to predict. So the fact that there's so much science, and that's really where we're coming at right now, is that there's so much science being thrown at cures, vaccines, treatments, and testing, that you have to imagine that the collective willpower of an entire world will figure this out. And I imagine they're going to figure it out faster than if this doesn't happen within a global pandemic. So you're looking at this and saying, one of these steps, one of these keys is this rapid testing, and then the ability to produce those rapid tests and distribute those rapid tests and be able to get everybody to them. Eventually, that could lead us going back into a quote unquote normal. But as of right now, normal seems a long, long way away, Kevin, as both of us are domiciled at our houses right now.
Well, talking about missing sports and sports really do help you in times of crisis. That's why, again, Franklin Roosevelt wanted Major League Baseball to play through World War II. There are only 3 places in the world that I know of right now: Nicaragua, Belarus, and then help me with that again. Tajikistan?
Was it Tajikistan? I
That's
can't
the one.
remember.
They all are playing soccer. Those are the only professional leagues that I know of for sure that are going on right now. And how much is sports being missed? There was an AP story last week that an amateur soccer team in Sweden, apparently their practice games because the league is not playing. They had practice games that received an unusually large exposure on betting sites during the pandemic. People are betting on a second division Swedish teams, or an amateur team, on their practice games. People are betting on that. That's how much people in the sport. That's sick. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying sports does have a place.
Sports does that. Well, I mean, it's a reason that NASCAR is getting over 1 million people watching their NASCAR, where they at least, and in my opinion, this makes it worth watching. Is they're at least had the real drivers are driving real, driving their e-cars themselves, in a real race. So there's at least some base competition there between, the transition between the professional athlete and the professional athlete playing video games, which I think is why they're so successful in that particular way. I don't think the same could happen In soccer, I don't think the skills necessarily translate directly. That's why driving, you can sort of simulate that a little bit better. But
But
you can
there's some
certainly,
Galaxy news this week, though.
yeah. Which
Was it
Galaxy
last?
News is that?
I guess it was last week. It was after the show, right? Chicharito, his wife is pregnant again, proving that he
I was
can
gonna.
score. I told
Yeah,
you.
oh, see, no, but everybody makes that joke, except it's just a bad joke. It's not even an effortlessly funny joke. It's a bad joke because it's his second child, so technically he already scored. If we're really want to,
He's
pin
got
that
a
one
brace
down.
now.
Yeah, exactly.
Going
Indeed
for the
he
hat
does.
trick.
Going for the hat trick indeed, and then he starts making his own
I hope Bingham didn't
soccer
have the
team as
assist
well.
on that one.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we go over to a great interview that I did a little bit earlier with a great LA
Another
Galaxy
Kevin.
player, and then of course a director of both the LA Galaxy Girls Academy and the LA Galaxy Boys Academy, sort of stepping into both roles right there. So let's have this great interview with Mr. Kevin Hartman. Hello, everybody, and we have a great interview lined up today. Joining us via Skype, a great man, a guy who's known for stopping a lot of shots in his time, but certainly has some great stuff with the LA Galaxy going on right now, so we wanted to talk about it. A two-time MLS Cup winner, a guy who I think has the second most starts for the LA Galaxy, the second most minutes for the LA Galaxy. Please welcome to the show, I think for the very first time, Kevin Hartman. Kevin, thanks for stopping by, buddy. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. No, certainly my pleasure. Have some things going on, but not so busy that I can't hop on Corner of the Galaxy and have a chat about the club and appreciate everything that you've done for the community.
I appreciate that. Well, I mean, the first thing we should start about director of the LA Galaxy Girls Academy, and that's a big deal. I know on the show we've talked about it a lot, but I think before we even touch on that, I have to ask, how are you weathering this pandemic so far? Or working from home, I have a feeling.
Yeah, it's been interesting. So last June, I took over as kind of the academy director on both sides. So work alongside Juan Carlos Ortega, who does all the technical director stuff. So I work on the soccer operations for Boys and Girls Academy. So that's kept me busy in terms of having communications with the families, but also talking to the different leagues, whether it's MLS or whether it's U.S. soccer, and finding out exactly, what the pulse is on things on a regular occasion, and making sure that I'm staying abreast of any changes or any things that might affect us long term. So yeah, that's kept me busy, but I've got two daughters at home that are kind of running around my feet all the time, and so it's good to kind of see them engaged with their schooling and trying to figure out ways I can help with that too.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, what happens with the academy right now? You have a bunch of young men and women who are progressing in their schooling and attacking this soccer career. Maybe something they want to make a professional or at least into college. These are important things. What's happening with the academy now that everything's pretty much gone to online learning?
Yeah, so we're fortunate. I mean, online learning, our school is, we have content and learning specialists, and Dr. Baduria does a great job of managing the staff upstairs. But we've always wanted flexibility just based on the amount of international travel, the number of things that we have going on within the academy on the boys' side. So I think that that has always been in line with trying to make sure our 17s and 19s have the ability to train alongside the professional teams, whether it's G2 or the first team. So that flexibility is obviously something that's come in extremely handy during this time.
Right.
We have a great relationship that has allowed us to continue to flourish in this environment. A lot of the conversations have just gone online now with the coaches and the tutors and or the online specialists have been great. So that's been fine. We have a homestay program for probably 4 to 5, 6 kids within our program. So trying to make sure that they get home has been something that we've made sure that we're taking care of. Making sure that we have follow up with the homestay families, and certainly appreciative of everything that they've done for us. And then, like I said, a lot of it just has to do with making sure that we have the performance staff and the nutritionists and our full-time coaching staff reaching out to the players and making sure that we're engaging them on a number of different things. But then we also want to make sure that the coaches themselves are doing enough so that they feel valued within the company. It's given us the opportunity to really work on some curricular development, some medium-term projects that might kind of get tossed to the side or just really congest the day sometimes. And so
Right.
it's actually been a really good opportunity for us to do some editing of film so that when we pull up the curricular stuff that you can kind of match it up with some of the games that we've had going on over the past 6 months to a year.
Wow. Yeah, like you said, it sounds like a busy time for everybody. One of the questions I get asked a lot, and I don't always have a great answer, is, you talk about the boys' academy and where that ends up. You end up, at the USL level. You end up at the senior team level. You end up in college. These are all great places to go. But you look at the girls' side of things as well. Certainly, the collegiate avenue is there. Certainly for U.S. soccer, the avenue is there. But what's the end goal eventually for these girls teams? I mean, and where this leads, and I'll tell you where it leads, is everybody keeps asking, are the Galaxy ever going to approach, a women's professional team?
So I'll take the first part of that first. I mean, I think you really have to kind of start with the athlete, and no matter what U.S. Soccer wants or what our organization wants, a lot of it comes back to what the players want and what their goals are within the game. And so, at this point, I would say probably 85 to 90% of the girls that we have within our academy, their number one goal is to play collegiate soccer, and so. For us, it wouldn't necessarily behoove us to, just think about how we're going to produce the next national team player. We have to make sure that we're engaged with what that process looks like. And so, one of the things on the boys' side that was very, I think, fortunate was they didn't necessarily have such a competitor at the national landscape as the girls do within the Development Academy and ECNL. And ECNL has always done a very, very good job, probably for the past decade. And so now U.S. Soccer finds themselves kind of caught up in trying to figure out if they can actually be the elite level of soccer within the United States. I mean, the needs of the players are tantamount. And so if the girls want to play high school soccer, it's sometimes difficult to pitch them on not playing high school soccer. And on the boys' side, if you have a professional team that becomes their end goal, maybe you have a little bit more leverage. So, I mean, it's a fierce battle right now within elite level soccer within the Development Academy and within ECNL, and trying to figure out if there's enough players to spread across two different platforms. But our 2003 group is really the first group that came in. And so they're mostly sophomore and juniors right now. And so we're looked to evolve our platform as we see fit moving forward.
I mean, so does that ultimately, are there ever discussions about putting a professional women's team with the LA Galaxy? Certainly, NWSL has been growing. We've been seeing some strides. I know a lot of Galaxy fans are probably familiar with the LA Soul back in the days. Is this something that's discussed at any sort of high level?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we continue to have discussions if it's a fit. I mean, obviously things continue to evolve daily now, but I think we have a lot of respect for what the NWSL's done. There are some ownership groups that want to do some things here within the Southern California area, and so I mean, I think that probably Chris and Tom and some of the higher ups within the organization continue to have those conversations, and they look to me for my expertise at the youth level as well.
It makes some sense. Well, we don't want to talk entirely Academy, especially as we currently have a bracket going on at cornerofthegalaxy.com. We're trying to determine, and by the votes of our listeners, we're trying to determine the best LA Galaxy team ever. Now, Kevin, part of the 2002 team, part of the 2005 MLS Cup winning teams. There's a whole bunch of heartache and heartbreak that happened before that and in between. But, I'd love to get your thoughts on what made some of the 2002 teams so special, what made 2005 so special, if there are other teams outside of those that you think could possibly also be some of the best LA Galaxy teams ever. What are your thoughts on any of it? I'll open up the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably that group that Siggy put together, and with the little help from Octavio. I mean, we have an offensively just a monster in that powerhouse, that 1998 team. But there was some real talent there, seeing Clint Mathis kind of move on to bring in Luis Hernandez, maybe kind of pulled that team apart a little bit earlier than maybe a lot of us would have liked. But yeah, I mean, that 2002 team, I just think that there were so many people that are top players that were playing their best soccer that they probably played. would get my vote, in terms of LA Galaxy teams that I played alongside. The 2005 team, I thought we had a pretty mediocre team, going into the final stretch, or we just weren't really able to get a lot out of it during the regular season. Sit down, had a conversation. That conversation led to some decisions that were made in terms of the players that played most often, and we went on a run. We peaked at the right time. We had a lot of pressure on ourselves as players because we'd kind of, had some issues with the way that the season had gone and how, maybe the lineup had changed so frequently that we just really wanted a little bit of consistency. But with that, with that conversation came a lot of pressure on ourselves to perform.
Right.
And, we did. And it was cool to look back on it and think about taking all the surface streets out to Frisco because the tollway didn't even exist at that point in 2005. And so to really kind of step up and play as well as we did, and to get that championship was special. But I would be hesitant to think that the quality from player to player and just overall tactically would have been as strong within that 2005 group as the 2002 group.
Well, I mean, we always ask these questions, Kevin. I think that's a great answer because, you're there. And we ask these questions to the guys who come on. We talked to Todd Donovan, Mike McGee, Sean Franklin. We talk about these guys who have won championships and what made those teams different from maybe other teams that they played on. Do you have something that sticks in your mind that you pass on to people who, to the youngsters at the academy of why those teams were successful when other teams that you played on maybe weren't as successful?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easy answer would be that we got along so well off the field. But I think that that's not the full picture, because I think that it's not always just about how you are, like in terms of, your friendships with the other players. And certainly there are some good friendships there. But I think it was a responsibility to do what was called for in a given moment, enough respect, even if you didn't maybe get along with somebody in the locker room, that you really had a common and a shared belief that there was that ability, but also that, when push came to shove, that the other person would step up for you. So whether that's as a professional, whether that's as a friend, whatever the case may be, I just think that those are the groups that I would say that were the most special. And, you think about the 99 team, I think that was a very similar situation, a lot of the same players, but not quite all of them. I think Vanny was a part of that, maybe that 99 group, or he just left, but Frage was still there. I mean, there was just like a group of guys that, you become really good friends because I think you have a lot of shared values. And sometimes that's when you think about like keeping a locker room together for an extended period of time, you can start to understand maybe the idiosyncrasies and the differences between the players, but you learn to get along with one another to a point where you understand the strengths and the weaknesses that each position holds. And maybe it's not the time to go down the left side. Maybe if we're winning 3-0, that's the time you go down that side. I mean, just all these little small nuances that aren't apparent sometimes when teams are turning over as quickly as teams sometimes turn over. So, but to be gifted with that opportunity, you really have to have enough success in the short term to warrant it, whether that's in any professional franchise. And so, I think we were fortunate a little bit more in the past to have that type of longevity, but now it's kind of put up or shut up. So, but it is a group. It is a group of people that, you probably talk to the 2014 guys, you talk to 2012 guys. I mean, it's like Marcelo and Juninho. You talk about guys that are like good friends. I mean, I would think that the relationships that I've seen since I've come back amongst that alumni group from that period of time, you can tell it's very similar to what that first cast of characters was all about in terms of just a mutual respect for one another. And I think that's kind of carried on. It's been one of the reasons we always like to kind of engage the alumni, because there are those shared experiences and those cool things within the organization that not a lot of clubs have.
Yeah, it certainly seems. So I know, as you know, I started covering the team basically 2009 on, so I sort of hit it right at the beginning of the quote unquote dynasty years, and we romanticized, that 2009, 2010, 2009 heartbreak. 2010 should have been a better year for the LA Galaxy. In fact, I believe they were knocked out by FC Dallas in 2010 in the Western Conference Finals there, or the
Yeah,
semifinals. Yeah,
that one rubs Adam Serrano wrong. I always
that
bring
that
it
was
up, and he's always like Hartman.
Yeah, I was gonna say. That was a rough one for the Galaxy. But I mean, you do have to. I always think that those heartbreaks and those heartaches and those learning lessons, and not just and also to your point, keeping the teams together. Those created the successes that came down that line. I mean, if you go back and you look at 2002, and we talk about 96 a loss, 99 a loss in the finals, 2001 a loss in the finals. You sort of have these things that have built to create that sense of we need it now. This is our chance. Does that play into it? Because I think you see that in 2002, and I think you also see it probably a little bit in 2005.
Yeah, I think, you talk about those dynasty type things, and you're trying to figure out exactly which players that you're okay kind of releasing, and in 2007, Beckham came in, I left. And I think probably the Beckham scenario really created some dynamics situations within probably the salary cap and all the things that they had going on. Um, and it constantly was requiring that the team reinvented themselves until Bruce kind of came in and there was that stability. But if you think about the coaches that were laying that kind of foundation, you got Siggy Schmid and you got Bruce Arena, two guys that really kind of understood the mechanisms within the league. And they were able to pull it off. They were able to, one of the things that LA's always, been able to do is use itself as kind of a drawer of top talent. I think the city itself is enough to get Eddie Lewis to come back and take less money just to kind of get home to Cerritos, and that's not
Right.
it's not something a lot of clubs have to offer in the Midwest. You only have a certain number of players that are kind of produced there. But with LA, you have a lot of guys coming home after successful careers in Europe or wherever the case may be, and so they were able to get some bargain bin type prices or salaries on some players that might not have done it otherwise. And so I think that that's a really unique thing that the club has going for them is people just really want to play here. And I think this year you would think of Sacha Klitschko's probably as a guy that would be in a similar boat coming back from New York and Belgium and Orlando. And so I think that allows us to do it maybe more often. You have an owner in Philip Anschutz who I think really kind of is willing to kind of push what that level looks like from a business perspective. And I know Laiwiki was one of the guys that kind of did that as well, whether that was here in LA or in Toronto. But yeah, it's that longevity, but also, you sooner or later you have to do it. And maybe that's in 2003 why Siggy left, even though he was in first place. We have to continue to push what the level is. And if it's not happening, then people look to make changes. And although he was able to get to a championship in 91 and 2001 and 2002, there's an expectation there, within the club. And if you're going to be the Galaxy and you're going to be like a city of stars, like you got to step up. And so that quality and that ability of the club to do that from 2010 to 2015 or whenever it was, I think it was certainly something special.
Well, Kevin, I know we could keep you here forever. I know I have 30 or 40,000 other questions we could talk, but we'll cut it off and we'll just we'll save it for the next time we get you back on the program. But we want to thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us. I know all the listeners will certainly appreciate it, and we hope you're doing well and your family stays safe and sane during all of this.
Yeah, no, be well, be strong. Anytime that I can get on and chat soccer, I'm always about that. And, like I said, the podcast, all the merchandise that's coming out, all the cool things that people are kind of doing as a way of kind of building this community and making us stronger. I certainly appreciate anything I can do or the Academy can do to help. I can certainly help to navigate that. So thank you, Josh. Wish you guys the best.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. All right, always a great interview there with Kevin Hartman, kind of a fun guy there. Absolutely,
Yeah,
Kevin. What'd you
I
think?
saw him in Houston. I saw him in Houston before. Well, yeah, just before the Galaxy's first game of the season. We were at the team hotel. I think it was him. I was at the bar. Had a drink already. A lot of Galaxy executives around having adult beverages, and he was one of them. And as you mentioned, Galaxy's only point of the year was that game in Houston. This may be the first time they go into midsummer without a victory and with just 1 point.
Yeah, I
Oh,
was
by
gonna
the
say
way,
winless.
have you listened to any Governor Cuomo's news conferences? Because I think he sounds like Bruce Arena.
He- there is certainly a New York tone to that. I mean, if I think a lot of New York people sound like Bruce Arena, but I don't know. There is a certain way that he answers questions that I think is very much a
Yeah,
Bruce. You know what
I
the
want to
difference is
hear
though?
Scott French ask him a question and just hear Governor Cuomo answer. That would be awesome.
The difference between Cuomo and Bruce is that Cuomo's way more diplomatic about things. I can tell already. All right, Bruce wouldn't put up with some of those questions. I'm telling you right now.
But Bruce has won
Uh,
more MLS Cups than Governor Cuomo.
that is also correct, a correct
Yeah.
statement. Well, the lots of things going on in terms of MLS Cups, because if you've been watching, they've been showing all sorts of different MLS Cups. They've been showing different like premieres. I think they showed the first MLS game ever today. I think there was a 2001 MLS Cup between the San Jose Earthquakes and the LA Galaxy. If you were looking for a Galaxy win that year, I would suggest you probably don't look for that game. It was funny, even talking to Kevin Hartman, I mentioned the 2010 season where the LA Galaxy should have been good, and Hartman was, of course, on the other side of that, that on the FC Dallas team that actually beat the LA Galaxy, and that they shouldn't have really. Whenever you look at all that, and then that, of course, I didn't say this, but the 2010 MLS Cup was the most boring MLS Cup possibly in the history of MLS Cups. So lots of MLS Cup top going around, and certainly if you were an LA Galaxy fan, you had the 2002. Actually, excuse me, I think it was the 2005 MLS Cup that debuted today in terms of their championship Mondays, where they've been watching that one. Yeah, it was 2005 LA Galaxy versus New England Revolution. Coming up next Monday, April 13th, it will be the 2011 MLS Cup. And then April 20th is 2012, and April 27th is 2014. So,
But before you get away from
of
that, do you know what today
yeah.
is? We're recording Monday. This is the 24th anniversary of the first game in MLS history. It's
Yep.
kind of interesting because we don't know when the next game in MLS history will be. But 24th anniversary. Who scored the first goal? It was a 1-0 game. Bruce Arena lost that game. San Jose beat DC United.
Was it Wijnaldum?
Yes, and I believe it was like
Yeah.
the 87th minute. And remember that first Galaxy team. Everyone knows Jorge Campos and some of the other stars they had. Kurt Onalfo was a defender on that team.
He and Kobe Jones was on that team. So yeah, I mean, there's some really fun, as we continue down this, I have a feeling we'll go more and more down that rabbit hole. We've been doing a pretty good job so far. We got Sean Franklin on, we got Kevin Hartman on. We've been doing a good job of going down the rabbit hole of trying to find some of the LA Galaxy players of MLS Cup fame. And I think we'll continue to try to do that as we move
should get
forward.
Kurt Onalfo. Where it all started. The guy, he was on that first team. Do you think the league was going to survive? What did you think of playing in the Rose Bowl?
Yeah,
we should get Kurt Onalfo
Yep.
on here. He's a good guy.
Kobe Jones also, Kobe Jones would be another one that you could just certainly reach out to. He certainly has that perspective, and he shares that perspective all the time. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff sort of going on here. I know the other thing I wanted to get on real quick is the LA Galaxy put out a press release. Wanted to sort of talk about it real quick. It's just that the LA Galaxy were collaborating with Chancho's Tacos, which if you've ever been to any of the Galaxy games or Galaxy 2 games, Chancho's Tacos and the LA Galaxy taco truck that's there will be out actually feeding those affected by the COVID-19. They are going to be out at Glendale Memorial Hospital, Northgate Grocery Store, Northridge Hospital, Curtis Middle School, and Stephen M. White Middle School as well. So out in the neighborhood feeding some people, which is kind of a cool thing to see happen. But Kevin, there were some PSAs that went out across Southern California as well, right?
Yeah, the Galaxy are doing a lot of other charity stuff too during this tough time. That if you go to their website, there are actually some tips on how to deal with coronavirus and how you can get tested, and some other things that are pretty neat through Dignity Health Sports, the hospital system there. But it was led by, we have to give credit, it was led by soccer people. It started with LAFC, but the Galaxy are a big part of this PSA that just went up today, where they gathered an athlete from all 12 professional teams in Los Angeles and then the two major colleges. And it was a 60-second PSA where they just basically repeat Mary Garcetti's tips about washing your hands, don't go into crowded grocery stores, maintain social distancing, those kind of things. But all the players, all the teams that gave one of their star players, Jared Goff from the Rams, and some others who come and make that PSA, and Jonathan Dos Santos is on there for the Galaxy and does his part in Spanish. It's a very nice thing. Is one of the people that organized it told me he cannot think of another time when all 12 professional teams put the rivalries and their fighting and everything else aside and came together and worked in a spirit of cooperation to do this. And it's a pretty important message. And the hope is that maybe people who don't listen to doctors or mayors or governors, that they should, maybe they'll listen to the Rams quarterback. Maybe that'll help a little bit.
Yeah, it very well should. I've seen an increase, of course, in LA Galaxy fabric masks that people are making, which has been super awesome. If you've been on, I think my Instagram account, I put one of those out. I'm gonna renew my call, Kevin, and I know I don't even think I asked you about this, but I was sort of pressing this. If you are an LA Galaxy fan and you are a member of this front line, especially any medical doctors or medical professionals, nurses, anybody who's dealing with this, I want to get in contact with you. I'm actually trying to work on a story for it. So head over to the website and you can contact me, Twitter, anyway, cornerofthegalaxy@gmail.com, however you want to do it. I'm looking to tell some of those stories because I think that it's an amazing sort of insight into what our medical professionals are dealing with. And not only that, but I'm seeing the medical professionals and some LA Galaxy fans with the Galaxy gear on still as they're going about and fighting this coronavirus, which is a fun thing to sort of take a look at as well. So again,
they're the heroes. Yeah, round of applause for the medical professionals. By the way, Victoria Block worked with the Galaxy and donated a substantial amount of canned food to the food bank in LA County. So that's another great thing the Galaxy has done.
Yeah, a lot of good things. All right. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Kevin? You want to touch on?
I just want to bring up one more thing. We brought up some names. You had Sean Franklin on, Kevin Hartman today. We talked about maybe Colonel Alpha or Kobe Jones. Maybe we should hear from the listeners. Who would you like to hear from? And be realistic. We're not going to get David Beckham on the phone. Maybe Landon Donovan. Probably not. Think about people that we can reach out to. And who do you want to hear from? Do you want to hear from Colonel Alpha? Do you want to hear from Kobe Jones? Do you want to hear from Dave Romney? Who do you want to hear from?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Let us know, and we'll do our best to round those people up. So far, so good. Still have something that we're chasing here in the background for Thursday's show as well. And I can tell you right now that Thursday, Miss Sophie Nicolau will be back, quote unquote, in the studio. Not in the studio, but from her house. That'll be our little update. So Eric's going to get a little
get to see all
time
our
off.
houses. Look, here's my house. Everybody see?
Yeah,
my office there.
I was gonna.
There you go.
Yeah, all the people on the podcast just went, Kevin, I can't see anything. It's like, go to YouTube. You can check it out. We'll have all that up.
Oh yeah, I forgot about those people. They can't see me do this NFL quarterback thing either.
No, they just
should
think
check
you're
it out.
being weird.
It's pretty good.
It's effortlessly funny, that's for sure.
I look just like Tom Brady.
All right, I think that about does it for us. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter, what you want to do is head on over to @KBaxter11, and of course, you want to look for me on Twitter as well. It's @JGuesman, JGUESMAN. All right. So, and also make sure you head on over to our website, cornerofthegalaxy.com. That's where you can find all of our videos, all of our FIFA replays, which, by the way, you probably want to miss the last one, but maybe not. Check it out. But a busy week coming up in FIFA replay land. 3 games for the LA Galaxy coming up. All right. I think that about does it for Kevin, the Panda Baxter. I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening to Corner of the Galaxy from the box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great time.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo. And on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.